Oh, brought a guest. What's up, y'all?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the sit down. This is episode 10, and this is a first of a kind right here. As you can see, there's 3 spots taken up instead of 2. And I'm with my new friend here, Mel or Melanie, and then this is a returning guest right here, Yona. She just couldn't stay out of here. She's wanted to come back for a second time. And what we're gonna do to get started is we're gonna talk about some of the standards that we sort of see in society today. We're gonna talk about some of the things that I think slow sort of the integration in society today, and how, as Mel had pointed out, which you'll see, how integration has actually been a curse instead of a blessing. Right. And some of the things that are used to create a standard in society today that actually cause separation, that cause isolation, that cause systemic racism to completely take a foothold in between one person to the next to the next. I think we all do.
Right. See, we live in Palm Beach County.
Exactly right, and I think that's why the whole thing is so powerful, that whole dynamic.
Right.
Because it's so easy to get both sides of the argument that it's not like you have to necessarily dig. You can probably 1 out of every 2 people down in this county, or probably
more.
There's a lot.
So?
I think we're outnumbered. I definitely think we're outnumbered over here.
It wouldn't surprise me, because where there's money, there's gonna be Trump supporters.
And it's also Trump town, you know? This is his town. I live off of High Ridge, and when I go from my home to Costco, literally, and this has been for a while, but now it's even worse. I mean, you have at least 5 massive Trump flags.
Oh, yeah.
When we were growing up, we always saw in your yard who you were supporting, but now it's like they want to do it obnoxiously, right? And it's like, and that's one thing I've noticed about their supporters. Everything has to be loud, in your face, obnoxious.
That's true.
And I think that's part, I think that's one of the things that, as, whatever side you support, whether it's Trump side or not Trump side, let's just say the Democratic side, I think one of the things that they dropped the ball on is that they allowed them to get a dig that way. And they're gonna do anything they can to try to get a dig, to try to get attention. So that's a perfect example. But they let it bother them, right? So it bothered you. Oh, I'm gonna do it even 2 times as hard now. I'm gonna do it 2 times as hard.
They're definitely the bullies on the playground, for sure. And I think that one of the weakest, I think one of the things that we're at most disadvantaged, liberals, let's say that, right? And I wouldn't necessarily classify myself as a liberal.
Me neither.
I told you that
radical left.
I'm definitely not radical left. I'm definitely a Democrat. I definitely have views that align more with feminism, but again, as a woman of color, I wouldn't consider myself a feminist because the feminist movement was hijacked by white women. However, with that said, I think that the Democrats try to be too politically correct, we saw that with Michelle Obama. When they go low, we go high. No, sometimes you gotta go low, especially when you're playing with people like Trump,
You gotta meet him at where he's at, pretty much.
I mean, it's easy for them to understand it. Sometimes you have to play at their level, unfortunately.
That's kind of what I feel like we saw the other day with Biden and Trump. He just kind of met him at his level. A lot of people were upset about it, but I think that was the only way you can communicate with him. You can't be up there and try to communicate with somebody that's so low. He's just kind of pulls you back down.
I don't even think he met him at his level, honestly.
No, nowhere near. Nowhere near.
No, and then even when Trump came out with his results for COVID positive, the entire Biden campaign pulled any negative ads. Why? They would never have done that if it was the opposite way around, ever. I think they're way too politically correct, and you can't always be politically correct in this kind of environment, right?
Sure, and I think, hopefully what they're trying to do with that is that they're trying to capitalize by them going high, per se.
Yeah.
They're really showing how dirty or how low the other side of the campaign is. I think that's probably what they're trying to do. Yeah. Now, is it effective or not? We'll see.
Right.
We'll see on this next election, because that's kind of been the tactic these past 4 years is, okay, I'll make you show a fool of yourself, and I'll just make sure I don't do that.
Right.
It's almost like that thing, just let Trump dig his own grave. You just let that man talk for long enough. He'll dig his own grave. He already has the shovel in his hand.
Yeah.
He's been doing it for 4 years now.
Did you guys see what happened with the Michigan governor, Gretchen Whitman?
They arrested 4 people that were trying to kidnap her?
Yes. They were literally plotting to kill this woman because of everything that's been happening.
What is this? Are these the Proud Boys?
No, I don't know. They didn't really
read the
say
article.
who.
I just saw it come across my phone.
Yeah, they didn't really say who, but she's been kind of handling Michigan in a way that a lot of Michiganers, is that how you say it? Michiganers?
I guess you.
A lot of people from Michigan are not happy with the fact that they're on this major lockdown, and Trump isn't happy about it either. And this was back in April. He tweeted something that said "Liberate Michigan."
Yep.
So they're bringing that up, and they're kind of
wasn't it Michigan where a bunch of and
yeah,
it wasn't
Watergate.
Well, no, when they stormed the Capitol building with rifles in their hands, saying that they refused to wear masks, right?
Was that in Michigan?
I think it was.
Oh.
And they're saying our bodies, our choice, and you see the images all over the internet of these guys just yelling in the police face, and the police aren't even flinching.
That's
and,
right.
Yeah, and then it brings up the topic about rioting and looting, because that's something that you hear the Trump administration continuously bring up in these debates, right? And then they wonder why we bring up race. Well, because when we do our peaceful protest, we're handled like animals, right? But you guys get to storm Capitol buildings with rifles, right? And I'm not necessarily saying that I'm against our Second Amendment right. I just think that it's clear as day the difference. You know, we live in two different Americas, and it's been made clear as day for us.
Yeah. And that's the thing, you know, I think the question that needs to get answered is, what is the standard?
Right.
You know, there's no standard. Because clearly there's not, because like you had said, Mel, you're playing by two different levels. So there is no standard, clearly. And I think one of the first steps we have to take as a country is try to figure out, you know, what standard do we want to play by?
Absolutely.
And what's the equal standard between one side and the next?
See, and that's what, but you bring up it brings us to another topic, which is we've never been on the same playing field, right? In this country, how our country was founded, how our country was built. We've just never been on the same playing field. Whether it be race, whether it be gender, we've just never been on the same playing field. It comes when we talk about, you know, I always said this in the 2016 election. I knew, and not because I'm a pessimist, but I knew that Hillary wouldn't be president. Why? Our country. Blacks had the right to vote, black men had a right to vote in this country before women did, of any race, right? Mm-hmm. So the country was already rattled that they had a black president, a biracial mulatto president, right? They were already rattled because of
However black.
Yeah, he's black. Oh, listen, can't
Forget the white mom. He's black.
Absolutely. We're gonna take any ounce that we can, and if we want to go by the 1/8 rule that this country made up, he's a black man.
But not even just for us, but exactly the 1/8 rule, like the way they look at him. They don't look at him as a mixed guy. They look at him as a black man.
But nonetheless, when Hillary was running for presidency, I said it to I remember I was living in London. I was an expat for a while, and I just kept on looking, and people were like, Trump would never make presidency. And then when Brexit passed, I was living in London, and I said, watch, Trump's going to be the president of the United States. Because you're seeing like people's morals were just so low. They wanted to oppress so many people, right? So I started in another country. Sometimes we sit here and we look at what's going on in America, and we're just seeing it one way. When if you look at it as a world view, this is not just an American problem. Racism is not just an American problem, right? The oppression of women is not just an American problem. This is all over the world.
All over.
Right. So when I just in my heart of heart, I knew, I said, this country's not ready for a woman president, and they say we're so emotional, and now look at us.
Did you watch that debate the other day?
Which one?
Trump and
Oh yeah, exactly. I'm like, women are emotional, right?
Women
are emotional. So yeah, so when you bring up that point about what is the standard, are we on an equal playing field? Well, we've never been on an equal playing field. Yep. When we talk about the wage gap in this country, white women make 70 cents on the dollar to a man, black women make 50 cents on the dollar to a man, and Hispanic women make 30 cents on the dollar to a man. So we've never done the equal playing fields.
And I think that brings up another really important question that needs to get answered. Now, what part of that is due to race, right? And what part of that is due to the economic setup that we have that forces those races into certain levels of work?
Yeah.
That force them to make 50 cents to a dollar, 30 cents to a dollar. Because you see, I've met many of people of color, whether it be Latino or, you know, Haitian, whatever the case may be, that clean houses.
Absolutely.
Why is that one thing that you always see as a constant? Is that, you know what I'm saying?
I think it's primarily opportunity.
I agree.
A lot of these people come from the Caribbean or South America, where they don't speak English, and they don't have the same education, the same background. A lot of times you just have hardworking people who want to work hard and allow their kids to have those opportunities that you see other people have. So unfortunately, you're right. You walk into, I work in ALFs, right? I go into nursing homes, I go into all types of things, and most of the time, it's a Latino, it's a black person, it's someone of the Caribbean that is doing that job. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're not smart or that they're not capable of doing something else. They just didn't have the opportunity to have the education that, you know.
And sometimes, you know, it is absolutely, I think, to build on to what you're saying, is definitely opportunity. And sometimes we do have the issue of illegal immigrants in this country.
Sure.
And some of them do not have papers, and they cannot work because they don't have a tax ID, right? So these are the jobs that they're able to do. Or they may have come to this country looking for asylum, and they have some family member that owns a lawn company, and so they're able to hire them. Starting your own cleaning business, you know, it's a humble job, but they make pretty good livings. You know what I mean?
But I honestly would love to see America without illegal immigrants.
Sure.
I'd love to see how it runs. Like, who's gonna do a lot of these things that most illegal immigrants do?
Exactly, right? Because you hear a lot of people talking about, oh, they're taking our jobs. Listen, those jobs that they're quote unquote taking are jobs that you would never be willing to do. Those are on the table right now. If you want it so bad, go take that.
Absolutely.
Like, I'd love
Go
to see
take
your
that.
kid go offer that job.
See, and
You know?
and that's kind of what I was trying to verbalize earlier in terms of opportunity. Why is their version of an opportunity different than mine?
Right.
Yeah.
Because for me, being a white man in America, that opportunity never crossed my mind.
You know why? Because they come from these impoverished countries, these third world countries, and they come to America with this dream of a better life. So they don't care how they have to get it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So for them, that is the dream. They work hard, right? You heard, you work hard, you bring home a check. My family's in the Dominican Republic. I have 2 brothers who live there, born and raised there. I've not left there. And it's funny, their idea of like wealth, right? They think that we're wealthy here, and I'm like, man, we just work so many hours.
And maybe too. They think you're rich.
They
you live
think
in
that we're
America,
rich.
you're rich.
And that's not necessarily the truth, right? Exactly.
Definitely
And so it's exactly what you said. You know, even us, I'm first generation born in this country out of my family. Those jobs never crossed my mind either.
Right.
You know what I mean? You come from a successful Haitian family as well.
Yeah.
Both your parents are in the medical field. I'm sure that never.
But I actually had a talk with my dad where I sat with him and I'm like, you know, they kind of pushed for me and my sister specifically to go out for these medical jobs. For
That's very Haitian.
the
of them.
nursing,
It
go
is.
be a pharmacist,
Yeah.
go just stay in the medical home, right? So I actually sat down with my dad. I'm like, you know, there's so many other jobs out there that are extremely lucrative where
Absolutely.
there's a million things that I can think that I would have rather do, but to them, they worked hard to get here. So they all wanted to just ensure that their kids do something that they know is going to generate income
Absolutely.
and where they feel like it's
taken
safe.
care of.
Yeah, you're taken care of. I don't have to worry about you. However, I think it's also limiting, like very
Absolutely.
limited.
Definitely.
So I don't know.
It's
we've
very
had
prevalent in the Haitian community and the Haitian Jamaican and the Africans, like Africans who have migrated
Yeah,
from Africa.
a lot of
They expect
doctors.
it's doctors or lawyers, right? Because these are the most prestigious jobs to them, and that's what they
Right.
expect their children to do. Yeah, absolutely.
engineering.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think it's interesting because it sort of kind of follows that guideline of you do what you know.
Right.
Absolutely.
Once you find, because like you had said, Mel, you know, once you find a system that works for you, you know, okay, I know it worked for me. My kids should just do the same thing.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Because we're not afforded the luxury to take chances.
Absolutely.
Not like other people, maybe like myself.
Right.
You know, I had the ability to take some chances when I was growing up.
Oh,
Yeah.
Whereas some people may not have, right? So
Right.
you have to, because listen, America, it is the land of opportunity, but
Absolutely.
it's very cutthroat. And I understand both sides of that argument.
Capitalism.
But exactly right. And for certain demographics that come into this country, they don't have that luxury of being able to challenge themselves to different opportunities. They have to stick to
Exactly.
what's good, like you had said, no, pay the bills, something that's going to provide right now. Because I don't have that luxury. I don't have anybody to lean on. It's just me.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think that's part of the thing too. Why is that starting point so different? Whether, I believe, if this really is the land of the free, I don't really think it matters whether you come from a different country or you're born here. If it really is the land of the free and we're all have equal opportunity, then why is it not represented in that way?
Right.
Right.
You know, that's
I
just
think
an
that's
interesting
smart.
concept there.
And I think they're starting to, well, honestly, I feel like just this year with everything that's transpired, I feel like they're trying to kind of balance that out and
Yeah.
leverage it out and put more black people in those top executive positions and CEOs and whatnot. But it's definitely going to take.
I think it's a stretch. I work in corporate
a long
America.
time.
I'm a VP in my company. I work very hard, and I am the representation in my company. And I love my company, and it's not that it's blind to them. We're having the conversations, but I am representing the woman, the Latina, and the black person. That's it.
There's
You
no
know?
one else.
No. So there was one of the CEOs of a big bank. I cannot remember the bank, so forgive me. But he basically said we're not filling the senior roles because there's no candidates of color. And don't make no mistake about it. There's plenty of qualified black people in this country.
He actually said that.
Absolutely. And you know, I went to Florida State University, and I was part of the BSU and the HLSU, and you know, there's plenty of qualified black people in this country, people of color, black and brown people. So when I hear comments like that, it infuriates me, right?
Yeah.
Last night, last night I had posted on my Facebook, I said, Kamala is my hero. I said, Kamala is my hero. I said, she is talking to Pence like a child, and I said, rightfully so. And somebody came on there hours later and was like, so is Kamala?
Angry, huh?
Oh yeah, and they were like, is Kamala your hero because she's talking down to a man? And I said, no. I said, she's my hero for many other reasons. I said, however, as historically we know that men like to speak over women and they like us to stay in our place, right?
I mean, he did that.
Absolutely,
He did that.
multiple times. And she said, I'm speaking. You know, I love that because as a woman who has sat in several boardrooms and had men speak over her, that for me was very admirable. It was a moment for me. You know what I mean? And I'm sure there's plenty of other women, and I don't just mean black women, I mean women of any race who felt that, you know.
When she said that.
Absolutely.
Speaking, yeah.
And because we know what it is to be oppressed, to be demeaned by a man, for our voices to be silenced, you know.
I honestly think he was trying to do that and realized that he couldn't. Because when he would cut her off, she would stop. Like, you're doing this by yourself today.
Yeah, about halfway through, he stopped trying that.
He was,
He gave up on that.
He was trying to like cut her off, and I think he was hoping she would keep talking so they can do that thing.
She was like a little pit
She would just look at him like, okay.
She was being incredibly passive aggressive with her nonverbal communication. I loved it. I loved every second of it. She gave that look to him a couple times that I give my 10-year-old when I know that he's lying to me. I'm like, I'm gonna give you another chance.
I saw the memes. Yeah. They were comparing her to Mrs. Huxtable. Did you see it?
I saw that one, yeah. But I don't know if you saw before they even posted that, I was like, oh, I give my son this look all the time, right?
So
when you know somebody's lying, you know they're really gonna try, and you're like, so yeah.
Now, Mel, let me ask you this, because you had referenced something earlier that I wanted to kind of come back to. That whole concept of a company, you know, not representing, you know, a certain race or a certain demographic, right? And it seems as though there almost is just a lack of effort. A lack of effort in whether that could be a form of play in a sense to not represent a demographic, or to maintain a standard or a balance that they have in their own mind. You know, Mel, what do you think that kind of represents, that whole concept there?
I think there's two parts to it, right? I think that some industries, I don't think that we even know exist, right? And so we're not going out for those jobs, right? Like we just discussed about amongst certain communities, they tell us to go towards these jobs, and you see it represented, right?
Sure.
In those industries. I work in program distribution, right? So I sell television programs that you see here in the U.S. I sell them internationally. Who knew a job existed like that?
Right.
Right. And so I didn't know. I moved to New York in 2013. I was a dancer. And as I was doing auditions, I was going to a temp agency because I needed to obviously, you know, supplement my income. And I got a job at BBC America because I spoke Spanish, and they needed someone who can read, speak, and write Spanish and translate emails for the VP of Latin America. And that got me into the industry, and I had no idea about any of it, right? And it was a 2-month gig. When I was leaving, my boss there was like, "Hey, are you looking for another job?" My first boss here is at A&E Networks, and she's looking for a coordinator. I didn't even know what a coordinator was. I went to performing arts school. I went to Dreyfus and middle school of the arts. So that world,
dancing.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So you know, that world was completely new to me. When I was living in Florida, I was a hustler. I was doing financial advising. I was teaching, like substitute teaching, permanently. So you know, I had never knew that this industry even existed. And then I went there. Somebody took a chance on me. Really, that's really what it boiled down to. Somebody took a chance on me, and it opened my life. It changed my life immensely. I got a great career in A&E. They invested in me. They sent me to the London office for 2 years, and I mean, they definitely took a chance on me. But they're also a very progressive company. They are the people who own History Channel, Lifetime, which we know skews very high in African American content. Yep. They own A&E, they own CI. So that company, a company like that who's progressive, yeah, you know, the EVP of the international team was a Black Jewish man. So, you know,
Jewish man.
Yes, and there's a lot of Black Jews. I know quite a bit of them. And so, you know, they took a chance on me. However, had I not gone there and went to a freelance gig and got that job at BBC, I wouldn't even know that industry exists. Right? So we also have the conversation in my business all the time that Black television is hard to sell. And I won't even elaborate on that, but there is a lot of truth behind that. So things like that, I think that, yes, it's not necessarily that they don't want to fill the spots. I think that people don't even know those opportunities exist out there.
Sure.
Then you do have the places that, excuse me, I just spit. Then you do have the places like, you know, that they do try to oppress and keep it very white. You heard last night that conversation came up when they talked about filling the Supreme Justice, right? They were saying, they were like,
don't pack the courts.
Don't pack the courts, right?
Yep.
But, and Kamala made it very, Senator
She made it
Harris,
clear.
she made it very clear. She goes, you guys have to do with all white men.
She made
And
it clear.
I am such an advocate for representation matters, right? I am a Latina woman, my first language is Spanish, and I moved to Florida very young, and people were always blown away that I spoke Spanish. My sister and my brother are darker hue than me, and people were blown away that we were siblings. True or not true, right? So it's always been one of those things. My hair, you know, curls a little bit more. So people were like, oh my God, you speak Spanish, despite my last name being Torres, right?
Yeah.
It's right. So, but the problem is, okay, we're talking about the early 90s. The problem is when you turn on Univision, when you turn on the television, when you look at a magazine and you see a Latina representation, do they look like me?
Right.
No, right? So representation matters, and that's what Campbell was trying to say yesterday. I'm not saying that I'm going to vote based on race. I'm not saying that I'm making all my decisions based on race, but do I want somebody who I can align with? Yes. Kamala being a woman of color, I felt represented last night with her on that stage.
Yeah.
So when it comes to these roles in corporate America that are not filled, I mean, think about how much BS affirmative action gets, right? For schools. But why do they have to put affirmative action in place? I mean, nobody talks about nepotism. Nobody talks about legacy, how kids get into schools because of legacy. Nobody talks about how Trump filled so many roles in his administration with his children. That's nepotism, right? And the black community doesn't do it enough. And we get shit for it, excuse my language. You know what I'm saying? And so that's part of the issue. I think it's, you know, like I said, I think it's bigger issues. I think that people don't understand the reason affirmative action was necessary, and then you get slack like, oh, well, you took my space. No, honey, my GPA, my work speaks for itself, my intelligence speaks for itself. You know how many times I've heard that comment and how insulting it is? I can clean the table with some of these people who got higher roles than me. I've sat in boardroom with white men who don't know what the hell is going on.
Yeah. It's frustrating.
It is. So I think it's a very deep conversation. Like, I think it's layers to it.
Definitely. And you know, Mel, one thing I picked up on is, like you had just said, there's layers to it. You know, I kind of see that very similar to how I see how the systemic racism is built into the foundation of what America is.
Right.
You know, because all those go hand in hand.
Ding, ding, ding.
Right? Because that's just, to me, an extension of the foundation of what this country is built on, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And you know, my question is how does that change, right? Where does it start, right? Because there's this, and I don't think that question necessarily has an answer, but I think it should be something that gets asked more. You know, I don't think as a society, as a community, we're asking the right questions. I think we're getting distracted by certain things, like the thing that makes me scared, especially with this 2020 year, I think powers higher than us are putting people in places to make us think that there's progress. It's just a facade. It's an
That's
illusion.
true.
It's not real.
Yep, I agree.
It's a puppet.
Right.
It's a puppet that looks like you, Yona, or
Yeah.
you, Mel,
Yeah.
but it's still a puppet.
Absolutely.
And it to me, it's a complete distraction tactic, because you look at the steam, you look at the momentum that was generated 5 months ago. Where's that now? It's dead.
Right.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
dead. And that's how easy it is. And that's why I believe, right? And again, I'm looking from the outside in.
Right.
That's why I believe there's been so little change from Martin Luther, Malcolm X.
Oh yeah.
You know, because if you really cut it down to the basic foundation of what it is, it looks the same, it smells the same, it acts the same.
Right.
Not a damn thing has changed.
But it's exactly what you said, and it's the operative word in systemic racism. It's the system, and for the powers that be, it works, right? Your brother actually had this conversation with me. We love debating things, and he was like, I know this is wrong, you know. Obviously, as a black man, he doesn't necessarily, you know, he doesn't at all like what's going on in this country. He's like, but think about this: if you're winning a game, if you're a competitor, let's say 2 basketball teams, whatever, and you're continuously winning, why would you apologize for winning?
Or why would you change it?
Why would you change it? Exactly what he said. He was like, do I expect them to be the because we want our white allies to speak up, right? And I do. I have a lot of white friends. Some of my closest friends are, you know, and I see a lot of, like I said, I went to Dreyfus, so I have a lot of friends who are super like artistic and liberal, and I love them, and I see them speaking up, and it makes me feel warm inside. But like, the change isn't going to come from y'all's community. The change has to come from ours. We are one of the most divided communities, and when I say that is, I'm a Latina woman, right? And you'll have people. I'm not black. I'm Latina, right? Baby, you're black. You know what I'm saying? Another one, I had a African American studies. It was an African studies course I took my senior year at FSU, and he was an African man who lived in DC, and he said, "No, don't have a heart attack here." And he said, because we almost had a heart attack in the class. He said, "I think the biggest problem that happened to the black community in this country was integration." And we were all like, "What? How could you dare say that?" But hear him out though. His point was, the minute we were integrated, we started wanting to keep up with the white people, and we left our own behind. It was like keeping up with the Joneses. We wanted to move to the burbs where they was, because our level of success then became white standards, right? Whereas before, if you look at, Black Wall Street and Tulsa, you had these very successful communities, and we looked out for each other. And, if you saw somebody else's kid in trouble, you looked out for them. And I was like, well, that's not true. I grew up in New York, and if I was doing something wrong, my neighbor on the 3rd floor would still go tell my mom. He said, yes, but you're Dominican. He said, in the Hispanic culture, you guys still hold on to that a little bit. Whereas the Black American culture really let go of that unity. Don't talk to my child this way. And that's why people want to create this thing that doesn't exist. Let's be very clear. Black on black crime is not real. White people kill each other. Why would we call it white on white crime? Asian people kill each other. They don't call it Asian on Asian crime. More white people kill each other than black people kill white people. So let's be very clear. Black on black crime is another term created to oppress us and make us seem like animals. But again, like I said, my professor, made us think about it a little bit differently. And so you think about the system put in place, we're crabs in a barrel. We're stepping on each other trying to get out instead of, helping each other. That's why I said the white people in this country, they use nepotism, right? And I don't necessarily see something wrong with nepotism. I just don't understand why our community can't get together.
Yeah.
And now, Mel, expand on that. Why do you think that is?
I think it goes back to exactly what happened. We have set, worldwide, our standard of beauty, our standard of success, all of it is white culture. And that's because of colonialism, right? Colonialism did a number on our people, especially on my culture, on the Dominican culture. We see it firsthand. They do not want to be called black. When you fill out anything on a census, Hispanic is not a race, it's an ethnicity, right? You are black, you are white, you are Asian, and you'll have people in the Dominican culture say they're Indian. We have not had Indian, it was demolished before 1900s, okay? But it's like a bad thing, and we, there was these things where they had dictators and they've had leaders of their country who wanted to make the race more white. Because that was what would seem more beautiful. You go to a Dominican salon and they're straightening your hair straight as possible, right? Pelo lacio, pelo bueno. Pelo lacio means straight hair, right? That's why now, my hair is actually very curly and I wear it out, but I cut my hair off. Yona could tell you, I cut my hair off like 2.5, almost 3 years ago, and everyone's like, oh my God, why'd you do that? My hair was long down my back straight, because I was like, I'm so tired of having to deal to these people's standards, right? So yeah, I think that all of it really goes back to the system that you mentioned in place, and I don't think it's just a U.S. problem. I think it is a global problem, and it started with colonialism.
I'm shook up right now. Holy smokes, it's crazy. Because
it's a lot.
It's not challenging in terms of understanding the concepts, it's challenging in terms of trying to figure out a solution.
How can you be the change you want to see, right?
Right, and that's exactly it. How do you do that? Because for every one right way you do it, there's 2 wrong ways that are right behind you. And I think the unfortunate reality is that human nature is, we want to highlight the wrong in the world, right, instead of try to illuminate the right and follow it.
Right.
Everybody wants to be their own individual. Everybody wants to, set the trend, be the trend. Why can't we just follow one person that's doing something right and we all create a trend together?
Right.
Yeah. I think that's part of the issue too. Everybody wants to have that individualism, and unfortunately, I think powers above us have tapped into that individualism and used it in forms of social media.
Absolutely.
In terms of TV, in terms of the standards that people judge themselves by. And they've used that instead of trying to bring people together, they use that individualism to separate, right?
Divide and conquer.
To isolate, exactly.
That's always been the tactic, divide and conquer. And that's why, even religion, and I'm a very spiritual woman, but at the end of the day, religion was created to control man, right? And most wars, if not all wars, have always been fought over religion. So when you say, why can't we find what's right and illuminate that? Well, you're going to go to different parts of the world and they're all going to have a different opinion of what's right.
That's true.
Alrighty, y'all. And that was the first, this is so awkward. This is the first part of episode 10. I'm here with my good friend Mel and Yona. And check back in for episode 10.2, the sit down, where we're going to actually talk about the debate that we saw last night with the VP and hopefully 2B VP. So check back in next time. But until then, we'll see you later.
Bye.
You're going to see a couple boxes in a little circle. So over here, this is going to be a playlist with a whole bunch of other videos that I posted. If you like what you saw so far from the sit down, you'll be able to keep up with everything right there. Right here is going to be the video to my previous video. And then right here, click that circle there. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell icon to make sure you get all the updates whenever I come out with some new content. I appreciate the support. Let's keep the train going. Here we go.